We've in Takaichi Senai's pick for finance minister, Satsuki Katayama, and we remember just several months ago, in March, I think, she was saying that she thinks fair value for dollar yen is probably more like 120 to 130, which is a good 15% stronger than where we are now. It feeds into this potential Tokyo Accord that you're talking about, which would mean softer, weaker dollar and stronger yen.
Yeah, and Martin, take it one step further. Team Takaichi knows if they don't bring inflation down from the current sort of plus 3% level, if inflation in Japan is still is not below 2% in 6 to 9 months' time, the popularity of this cabinet is going to plummet because the Japanese people, the Japanese voters, their number one, number two, number three concern is inflation. And the best way to get inflation down is to get the yen up.
Yeah, which is a polite way of saying, Jesper, that, the first job of any government anywhere in the world is to stay in power. So I hear you there. So, we've talked about the yen. If it does get stronger, yep, it's going to tackle the imported inflation problem. Where do you think fiscal policy is headed under Takaichi Senai?
I think fiscal policy is basically going to stay the course. I mean, just look at the cabinet lineup. It's basically a whole bunch of fiscal hawks. In particular, you've got Kobayashi-san as the LDP policy chief. And from that perspective, I think, all this lazy analysis that, she's just going to do exactly what Abe did and step onto the metal, expand fiscal policy further. I think that that's completely off the table. Everybody in Japan knows that when Abe came around, Japan was at the risk of a deflation spiral. Right now, under Takaichi, Japan is at the risk of an inflation spiral, and how to control that by reducing spending and by increasing interest rates, that's where it gets exciting.
Yeah. But what about, fiscal policy staying intact, keeping up with the status quo? Is that enough to sort of buffer the impact on exporters in Japan?
Exporters, for all intents and purposes, are doing perfectly fine. And for example, the leading companies are budgeting already for around 142 to 143 for dollar yen. The exporters are not the driver. What Takaichi needs is to create a feel-good factor amongst the Japanese people. And for that, she needs to get lower food prices. She needs to get lower energy prices. She needs to get lower import prices.
Yeah. Can we explore the internal sort of dynamics, the fractures within the LDP, and perhaps some kind of balancing act that she needs to do in order to stay as in the position, sort of having to balance the Abe time, loyalists and moderates and so on. So some of the cabinet picks stood out to me. So Koizumi to defense, Motegi to foreign affairs. Do you think she is trying to sort of show the united front, the genuine unity, or is this just a fragile truce that she is trying to achieve here, in your opinion?
No, I think that the LDP is much, much more united under Takaichi's leadership than people make it out to be. Just look at the cabinet. Basically, everybody who stood against her in the LDP leadership election is now in a seriously important cabinet position. Of course, Koizumi, as defense minister, I mean, that's extremely important going forward. I think much more important is the fact that Takaichi ditched the 29-year-old alliance with the Komeito and is now aligned with the Reform Party. And what the Reform Party wants is administrative reform. It's very important. She had to sign the deal, and she agrees with that the number of politicians in Japan, the number of parliamentarians needs to be cut by 10%. Also, administrative reform of regional governments and administration, which is the big thing that the Reform Party is calling for. She also agreed to that. So I think the LDP, under her leadership, being united, being inclusive, and actually getting on with the business of reforming Japan's administrative state and making it more efficient, that's going to be one of the huge policy goals.
What about names like Yoshimasa Hayashi? So, some actually saw this as a sort of a hard right turn for her cabinet. What kind of risks does that pose to perhaps the party cohesion? I know that you said the party is much more united under her leadership, especially, when we're talking about a party that is trying to come off a series of scandals.
But look, it's so interesting, right? Because, divisions in a party only happen when your adversaries don't get positions of power. Takaichi is very Machiavellian because her adversaries are all in position of power, which actually means that they are responsible, and they are responsible for the success of this cabinet. Because you're right, for this cabinet to be legitimate, they need to face the voters. And there's going to be an election at some point over the next 12 months, and the LDP wants to gain back the absolute majority in Japan's parliament. That's where this is a cabinet of unity. I think that people make far too much of the divisions between the different factions. The fact of the matter that you've got a unified LDP that wants to win and puts together a cabinet that includes the adversaries, that's, I think, where Japan is going to show, because very well, when they play team sports, the Japanese are very strong.